Am I the only one who's been feeling as if there is this looming disaster over us? You know, like we have no future, the climate is going to kill us, the economy will collapse, or due to the rising temperatures there will be a war over the most basic of resources on this planet. Okay, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. A looming disaster can be anything really. A really bad fight with your significant other, being uncertain about your future, getting fired, or not working more on a video when you just got 30k views. When such things happen, it's like that old proverb goes, it's either cope or rope. I surely hope this video will help you choose the former. Well, the problem with coping though is that it can go many ways, and we see one rather destructive way in the story of Furina. But I hope we can find a better way to cope here. This video contains spoilers for Fontaine's story. I know most of you don't read these quests anyway, but if you care, beware. First, let's go over some lore. Fontaine is the hub of culture, arts and technology. It's located in the very center of Teyvat, and the entire region is elevated way above any other. It's in the center, since that's where all the water of the continent, or possibly even the planet, comes from. Yo, this actually makes me wonder, is Teyvat a planet? I mean, this is unrelated, but I don't want to make no factual mistakes. Let me know in the comments if you know. Also, while we are at it, leave that like and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate all your support, guys. I would have never thought I would get such warm reception, just like people of Fontaine would have never thought they could be dissolved. Yeah, turning people into water is a thing here. This is all related to the great mystery we slowly uncover while in Fontaine, and this mystery starts with a prophecy. The prophecy goes as follows: everybody in Fontaine is born with sin that cannot be absolved.
In the end, the people will all be dissolved into the waters, and only Furina will remain, weeping on her throne.
Only then will the sins of the people of Fontaine be washed away in a great flood, or something along those lines. Now we know that all of this comes down to the previous Hydro-Archon's actions. Egeria, since that's her name, was the master of all oceanids. Also, there is another reference to ancient civilizations and their mythology. In ancient Rome, Egeria was a nymph known for the legendary role of being the advisor and the divine consort of Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, to whom she imparted laws and rituals pertaining to ancient Roman religion. Aren't Fontainians kind of like nymphs actually, who romanticized human life so bad they wanted to become human? Well, Egeria helped them by mixing their blood with the water from the Primordial Sea. The Primordial Sea was the origin of all the life of Teyvat. This allowed her to change their biological makeup into that of humans. That's why when Fontainians come in contact with that water, they dissolve, because the life-creating power of this substance is too much for their bodies to handle. And now comes their prophecy. I mean, it was obvious this was going to be a huge driving point in the narrative. Either way, it's written as if that's some large surprise that the prophecy really is true. And the first sign of this, that kind of surprised me actually, was the fact that people can dissolve. It made me appreciate how looking at something from a different point of view can make you realize more things about that thing. If we take the part of the prophecy which says that the sins of the people of Fontaine will be washed away in a great flood, literally, then we would have been able to deduce this was going to be the case. It's the same like taking a story symbolically can make you realize it was meant to convey something else. That's what Nahida did with Scaramouche's story whenever he decided life was actually too much to handle. Another thing that proves the prophecy is true is that the water levels actually start rising. While there are reasons to believe something catastrophic could happen in the real world, I don't like to believe this, since all throughout history, people have always been fear-mongering with all kinds of ends of the world. Like, yeah, climate change is real, but with AI, we can hope to solve this issue. Either way, catastrophes concern everybody, since they can be small scale, like all about you and your life, or very large like the one portrayed in Fontaine. And this entire story portrays something I've been thinking about. The first way it shows itself is in the different ways characters handle this situation. And at this point you might be thinking, oh, but this is a video game, real life is much more bleak and boring. I mean, that's correct, but don't leave just yet. There is more to this story than miracles or fantastical abilities. What characterizes Traveler and Paimon in this story is blissful ignorance. Yes, we do try to help as much as we can, and yes, we go out of our way to help others, but at the end of the day, no matter what would happen, we will still press on in face of disaster, because we have a different goal. If something terrible happens, obviously, we will think about it, but having that something in life makes you keep moving forward. They even say they would still press on in face of disaster and travel like they always do. Or maybe it's not even the matter of having something different going on. Maybe the part about them still traveling like they always do. Maybe it's their free-spirited traveling in nature and the scarcity of things they are attached to that really makes them be able to move forward, since attachment is even part of the dukkha doctrine in Buddhism, which talks about unhappiness in life that comes from how boring everyday life is, and that's what makes us not appreciate life at all. Dukkha basically means suffering, and attachment is one of the things you must rid yourself of according to this doctrine in order to achieve true happiness. Still though, it's way easier said than done, since what do you do when you're the one who spent last 500 years trying to avert this disaster with little to no hope? It's easy to say to press on in face of disaster and do your own thing, but what if that disaster concerns everything you have or everything you need and nothing you do seems to ever work? It's only natural that as powerless tiny humans we fall to despair, and the despair is basically the end of the road for us. I'm pretty sure Furina must have gotten scarred for the rest of her life with those years of crying herself to sleep, but the harsh reality is that scars are often unavoidable. How can we blame her though? She was put in this position with no guidance or explanation whatsoever, so what else than fate is there to blame? And until the very end of this play, she has no idea she was made a tragic protagonist by Celestia. At the very least, she can find peace in the fact that her suffering wasn't for nothing. But what if it was though? What if her suffering amounted to nothing? Then maybe it really was just Celestia being a bitch. Since why are some people more fortunate than others? There is either no answer, or the only answer is acceptance, that that's what life made you to be. And in real life you could try and better your situation. I mean, isn't that what Furina was trying to do as well? Just sometimes, no matter what you do, you still end up with nothing, just like she did. And at some point it turns out that's how it was meant to be. And sure, saving everyone is a sort of a payback, but really, can anything make up for 500 years of hell? You know who else was scarred for life? My dad. Or the knave. Arlecchino's way of handling this situation is damage control. You could argue this is one of the best ways, since look how much he's getting done when Poisson gets flooded. Handling situations this way has this sort of masculine vibe to it, doesn't it? It's about this stoic acceptance that there are things you can do nothing about, so you divert attention to things that can actually make a difference. Even though she accepts parts of this situation, she's still on the spectrum with Furina, since, like I said, this acceptance is only to a certain degree. She still wants to do everything in her power to save as much of Fontaine as possible, and in contrast to the Traveler, who just helps by chance, Arlecchino focuses on making a difference in this entire scenario. Charlotte is probably the most wholesome character here. Just look at her, she's so passionate about her job as a journalist that this is what she will do until her last breath. According to her, she would be willing to risk her life in order to get news straight from the scene, but she doesn't wish to die. She still hopes she can evacuate.
If, just for example, Fontaine were to be flooded tomorrow, what would you do today?
Huh, that's the prophecy you're talking about, isn't it? I mean, I do hear about it often, but I've never once thought that the day could be tomorrow. If you're seriously asking, then I might try and think of a way to leave Fontaine. Oh, but I'm still a journalist first and foremost. That means I have a duty to be reporting from the scene. And secondly, I wouldn't forsake my homeland that easily. From what I've seen, most people don't know what they'd do should the worst come to pass. In truth, it might be better just to behave like normal rather than worry over such an end. So in all likelihood, I'd probably still be prepping at the office for that interview of ours. I know what you're thinking. That sounds a bit sad, but I've always believed that it's best to do what you enjoy. Just think about it. If this nation really were to be suddenly destroyed tomorrow, but I still successfully finish an exclusive interview with a truly unique person, then the story I would wind up writing would truly be timeless. And then do you know what I'd do? Well, I'd write that story, send it for printing, and use messenger pigeons to get copies out to the various nations as soon as possible. I'm not a dreamer, nor am I a workaholic, but I do love my job, and I'd be proud of leaving such an article behind. I guess you could say that I was born to be a journalist.
And it's reminiscent of the way Traveler and Paimon see this crisis. They accept what's going to happen and do their thing instead of deliberately focusing on solving the problem, like Arlecchino or Furina. Well, no matter what any of them did, it still ended up the same way. So Focalor separated her divinity from her body and mind. That's how she created Furina, who is that body and mind, and she hid the divinity in the Oratrice and waited for the day the Oratrice would harvest enough Arcade, which is a Fontainian system of energy, to crush her divinity. Focalor used to be an Oceanid, so her dream was to become human, and for her, Furina achieved that dream, and so justice for the Fontainian people was served. The Hydro Archon got crushed, which returned the stolen power that was used to create her Gnosis to Neuvillette, its rightful owner, since the power that's contained in Gnosis is the same power that Celestia stole from the 7 Dragon Sovereigns years ago. That's why the 7 main elements, for example, correspond to the 7 dragons. And so came the day the prophecy got realized. Everything still happened the same as in the prophecy, except that nobody died. And this raises the question, has anybody, even Focalor, made any difference in this entire situation? Or since it's called the history of the future in the game, everything happened like it was prophesized? I personally believe the latter is true, because who are we to say that humans are somehow disconnected from nature? Who are we to say that every single law of this universe doesn't apply to us, since we know time could be non-linear if you bend space-time enough? Who are we to claim that we have free will? Although keep in mind, this is just my very limited interpretation of these topics, and this stuff is very mind-bending, so we are stopping here. Even though this is just a fictional story with many things that wouldn't ever happen in the real world, nevertheless, it's interesting to think whether or not destiny exists. Maybe you've seen some signs of destiny in your own life. Well, you know my opinion. Now, let me know in the comments what yours is. Maybe there really is just a single outcome. Maybe you are just an observer in your own body, or maybe it's thanks to the conscious decisions of people like Focalor that so many people get saved. So now imagine that Furina knew all that. Living through her pain could have been so much easier, but apparently she wasn't supposed to know that, since that's fate. Well, you are supposed to come across this channel and hear me talk about this destiny, so I hope this story is some thought food for you. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide whether your life is a prophecy or a story that you write, or maybe even a little bit of both. Who knows how much control we really have? Well, I hope I have enough control to get this video out by Christmas. And so, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and see you guys in the next year.